And welcome to the Lafora Talk Show. This is season 4, episode 5, and we are very excited to bring a special bonus show to you today. I am your host, Tanya Friedman, CEO of Kinetics USA, the #1 company for direct hire, bringing healthcare workers to the United States. Very proud member of the AMN healthcare family. Our topic today is retrogression. So if you are joining us now, please stay tuned because we have 2 legal experts who will be coming in to share their information with you. We will have information about what is the visa bulletin, what is retrogression. We will have their ideas and predictions of what they think is going to be coming over the next few months. They will also be taking your questions. This is a bonus show in honor of Nurses Month. So we did do a show on retrogression on the 17th of April, right after retrogression hit, but this is a bonus show. And the reason why we are doing the bonus show is because in honor of Nurses Month, we really feel that this is a very scary topic. It's a topic that is very worrisome for you at home if you are wondering how this is going to affect you. And we want to give you another opportunity with the legal experts to hear more about what retrogression means and how that is an impact for you. Can you still be filed for an immigrant petition? Number 1. Number 2, if you have an immigrant petition, what are the implications from a timing perspective in your particular case? My desk is full of questions, and I see we already have people that are joining us in the chat. So we're going to bring in our legal experts. We are joined now by John Dawson. Hi, John. Welcome.
Hello.
And we are also joined by Mike Hammond, no stranger to the show. Hi, Mike.
Hey,
welcome. Welcome to everybody who is watching around the world. I see we have lots of people joining us. So Yilris is tagging a friend, Cherries. And Yilris, thank you for doing that, because that's what the Lafora Talk Show is all about. This is healthcare workers helping each other. So please share this page to your social media. Please tag your friends. It's very important to become educated about retrogression and what that means for you. Jerome is asking, hello, ask predictions for the June 2023 visa bulletin. So Jerome, we're going to get to your question. Valina is asking a reversal in development or condition. Is things going to change? We're going to be asking the legal experts. Oscar is watching. Catherine is saying hi. Arlene is saying hi from Jamaica. Sanrio is saying this is very informative. Thank you. Sanrio, Jacqueline is saying, is it true there's no issuance? Oh, God, I lost it. Of visas until 2025. So that's a good question. Sarah's saying hi. My Dreams is saying hi. Is there any possibility that the rest of the world priority date will be current before October? Vivian's saying hi. LB is saying, case is expedited at embassy. How long will I wait? So lots and lots of questions coming in the chat. And just before we get started with the questions, I just want to give a big shout out to the Lafora admin team for giving us the platform to host the Lafora Talk Show. The Lafora Talk Show has been coming to you for 4 years now, once a month. And this is just in honor of the amazing admin who do so much for so many healthcare workers all around the world. So we want to give a shout out to Louise, to Kay, to Anna, to Miss Jean, to Paul, to James, to Nurse One, all of the Norton 4 admin who do such a phenomenal job. Okay, so let's get started. I think let's have brief introductions. Let's start off with you, Mike. Do you want to go ahead and just give a brief introduction? And then,
sure.
John, you can go ahead.
Sure. My name is Mike Hammond. I'm an immigration attorney. I specialize in staffing in healthcare cases and been doing this for 30-some years.
Okay. Lots of experience from Mike Hammond. John, John, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is John Dawson. I am a immigration attorney with Musil Onkenholt. I've been practicing for about 12 years now, and in both healthcare and IT industries.
Thank you, John. So thank you for joining us. John, it's your first time on the Lafora Talk Show, so we want to welcome you. But John, as he just said, comes from the Musil Onkenholt team, and we've had many people from the team. So we're excited to have John with us today. All right. Everybody ready? We got lots of questions. Let's go. So the first question that everybody is asking is about the visa bulletin. Lots of questions, Mike, about what is the visa bulletin? What does it mean that it's in retrogression? So we've got a slide of the latest visa bulletin. And can you maybe talk us through there and explain what is the visa bulletin, number one, and number two, why are we in a retrogression situation?
Sure. So are you going to bring the slide up?
Yeah,
There we
go.
go. Okay. So basically, the Visa Bulletin is a publication that comes out from the Department of State, and it comes out. It's issued monthly. It actually comes out usually a few weeks before the next month. So we saw the May Bulletin on April 16th or 17th. We'll see the June Bulletin probably sometime into this week or early next week. So generally a couple weeks before. And it says there's two parts to the Visa Bulletin. There's what we call a final action date chart. That's the chart that says when you can actually have your interview and get your visa issued, your visa stamped in your passport. And the other is what they call is a dates for filing chart. It's not quite as relevant to overseas nurses, but has some relevancy as far as the NVC processing your paperwork. And those, if you notice, there was a column that had a country listed and then a date beside of it. Those dates are what are called priority dates. So think of the priority date as your date in line, your date in the queue. You get your date, your priority date, your spot in the line, when your I-140, and again, we're talking for registered nurses, when your I-140 is filed. So that becomes, so I file your I-140 today, I'm going to get a date of May 9th, 2023. That's your date in the queue. And if we go back to that chart and look, it shows that the Philippines and the rest of the world, ROW just means everybody who's not on the list. So right now, the only countries that are separated are Philippines, India, China, and Mexico. Everybody else throws into the same category. And we're focusing here on the Philippines and the rest of the world is June 1st, 2022, which what that means is if your I-140 was filed before June 1st, 2022, then you are what we refer to as current. You're at the front of the line. Your priority date is before June 1st, 2022. You're at the front of the line. So each month we see who's at the front of the line, which means who can get interviewed, who can proceed with the next step. Another important thing about the Visa Bulletin is it runs on what's called a fiscal year. The government's fiscal year starts on October 1st each year and runs till the end of September of that year. So that's an important part of the Visa Bulletin. So that's an overview of the Visa Bulletin. I'm sure there's other issues relative to the Visa Bulletin we'll get into, but that's a big overview.
Okay, so that's a great description, Mike. Thank you for that, of the Visa Bulletin. And I see that we have we have lots of questions about that in the chat. Arati is saying, is this retrogression same for all countries? If not, then what is the difference? So Arati, as Mike just said, if you are rest of the world or are Philippines, that 1st of June cutoff 2022 is the cutoff. And on the chart, we had the difference with India and China. So hopefully that clarifies the different countries. John, can you talk a little bit about why we're finding ourselves in retrogression?
Sure. I think the main reason that we're in retrogression right now is that there is a huge demand for registered nurses in the U.S. So a lot of hospitals, a lot of petitioners in the U.S. are filing large numbers of Schedule A I-140 petitions for nurses. And in recent years, I would say the retrogression was perhaps delayed a little bit because due to COVID, we had some extra visas that were able to be used. So during COVID, a lot of embassies and consulates around the world were under very limited capacity and very few appointments being scheduled. And a lot of family-based immigrant visa interviews did not move forward. And a lot a lot of family-based immigrant visas were not used at all. So those excess family-based visas were dumped into the employment-based pool, and as a result, for the past couple of years, we were able to have a much higher number of immigrant visas issued for these employment-based categories, including the cases for nurses. So, so that helped, hold off on the retrogression. But lately, now that embassies and consulates are getting closer and closer to running back to full capacity, we're not going to have those excess visa numbers anymore moving forward. So the Department of State essentially could see how many visas were being used through this part of the fiscal year that started in October, and decided that, for the time being, they need to put the date back to make sure in their estimate that we don't exceed this year's allotment, that will end September 30th.
Okay. So from what I understand, you're saying, John, the pandemic, although it was the most awful situation, of course, for everybody, there was one benefit in that there were excess amount of visas available, which was kind of like an anomaly, right? We haven't experienced that before. Mike, before we get into the specific questions, can you just talk a little bit about when people hear the word retrogression, the mind for those people who've been in the industry for many years, and I know all of us have been in the industry for many years, but many nurses know this as well, it kind of goes back to that 2008, 2009 retrogression, when that retrogression lasted for 5 years. Can you talk a little bit about the difference of what happened at that time in kind of the macro environment, and why every year after that there might have been like a short retrogression? Can you talk about that difference?
Yeah, so let's first talk about what a lot of people refer to as short retrogression or summer retrogression, is that the allotment of immigrant visas that are given out each fiscal year work on a use it or lose it kind of basis. So let's pretend that there's 100 visas available on October 1st. And if by September 30th, they've only issued 90 visas, then 10 visas get thrown away, get wasted, okay? And so the goal of the Department of State and the goal of USCIS is to use up all 100 of those visas that are allotted. So they don't want to wait to the last minute to use them up. So that they try to spread them out a little bit, but generally speaking, when we get closer to the summer, they'll already seen that they've either used them all up or getting close to using them all up, which means that they're going to then create retrogression. They're going to move the line backwards so that they can finish what they have already in the queue, but they aren't going to take any new cases in. They're not going to move any other cases forward for an interview because they know they can't issue them before October 1st of next year. So summer retrogression is not a bad thing. In fact, I think it's actually a positive sign that the government is efficiently using our visas. There are a number of years when visas are wasted. So for example, last fiscal year, they wasted almost 160,000 immigrant visas that just got totally wasted because they were inefficient. It was the spillover from the family that John mentioned and talked about, and they didn't get to all of them, so they were just wasted. So what we like to see is, as the end of the year come up, we like to see some retrogression, knowing that that temporary retrogression is going to get resolved by October 1st. Now, what Tanya was talking about, what happened in 2008, 2009, is we had a special category called the Category X that was created just for registered nurses. When all those nurses were used up, that extra number that was allotted was used up. Nurses got dumped back into the regular Eb-3 category. And at that time, we also had significant economic issues in the U.S. With respect to whether it was a recession, what news channel you're listening to would define it differently. But the bottom line, it was a significant downturn in the economy that made that any potential change, whether it be legislative or politically, was not palatable because there was no economic, the economic needs were not as they are today. Where today, as John mentioned, we have high demand, super high demand across the board, and no one sees that demand lessening up. So I think this is very, very different than what we saw in 2008, 2009.
Okay, I would imagine that anyone who's listening right now could be feeling a little bit relieved, and understanding the difference between a summer retrogression and what happened in 2008, 2009 is really, really important to keep in your mind to all the viewers of the Lafora Talk Show as they are listening to this, because I think people hear the word retrogression, and this is the power of knowledge and educating yourself. So if you are joining us now, please share this Facebook show with your friends in your social media. Please tag your friends. The Lafora Talk Show is the Lafora admin's way of paying it forward for nurses, and education and knowledge is power. So Mike has just explained and John has just explained the visa bulletin. They've explained what we are seeing right now, why we have retrogression, and Mike has just explained why what the difference is between a summer retrogression and what happened in 2008, 2009. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the 5 steps of the green card process, and we're going to be because there's a ton of questions that are coming in, and I want to make sure that we look at different scenarios, because we're not going to be able to get to every single person's question, but this is really for everybody's education so that you can pinpoint where you are in the process, and then we'll talk about how retrogression is going to impact you, and we'll go through questions as well. So these are the 5 steps of the green card process. John, can you maybe talk us through the 5 steps, and at each step, if you can just give us a brief summary of what that step is, and then how, if you are at that step, how does retrogression impact you?
Okay, sure. So for the first step, the pre-filing, that's basically the work that's being done by both the client as far as making sure they have a valid prevailing wage and notice posting in place, and also the registered nurse, ensuring that he or she has the necessary documentation, the nursing degree, the passing NCLEX, and that once that documentation is in place, the hospital can sponsor the nurse in step 2, filing the I-140 immigrant petition, and that's what Mike was talking about, is when the nurse is going to get the priority date, the date that's filed. So again, so far everything's moving forward as normal, and USCIS is still going to process the case, still going to approve the I-140 petition, regardless, even if your priority date isn't current. And then once the I-140 is approved, it moves on to, sorry.
John, so sorry to interrupt you. I just want to clarify, because I think, it's really important for everybody to understand the impact, and there are a lot of questions coming in the chat about this. So at the first step, from what I hear you saying, that pre-filing step, when the client or the hospital is applying for prevailing wage and posting, there's no change under retrogression, right? A hospital can go ahead and file that. So there's no stopping an employer from doing that pre-filing stage. If we look at that second step, the filing of the immigrant petition and getting the I-140, which, as Mike has said, is your place in the line, from what I hear you saying, there is no problem for an employer continuing to file for I-140s, even to pay for premium processing, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so that's really important, because there are a lot of people who are saying, well, if I've got an I-140, can I still be filed? And what I hear you saying is we can.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to jump in there, John.
Oh, no problem.
I just want to make sure that's clear. Okay, so let's go back to the 5 steps.
Okay.
Sorry, John, if you want to carry on.
Sure. Yeah. So after the I-140 is approved in step 2, then we move on to step 3 at the National Visa Center, and normally that file is transferred from USCIS to NVC within about 1 to 2 months. And for anyone who has already had an I-140 filed and approved, we can still, even though there's retrogression, we can still move forward at the National Visa Center stage as far as paying fee bills, submitting the civil documents, the birth certificate, marriage certificate, police clearance to the NVC, and filling out that online application, the DS-260 application. So NVC will still review those documents and DS-260 applications, and if everything is complete, then NVC will issue the documentarily qualified notification to the applicants to let them know that everything is complete at the NVC stage for step 3. And then, the retrogression really comes in for step number 4, because if the nurse's priority date is not current, then he or she is not going to be able to get that interview scheduled. But basically, the recommendation is to move forward through those different steps up until step 4, advance as far as you can in the process, because when your date does become current, you'll be ready and waiting to go as soon as your interview is scheduled.
Okay, so thank you, John. That was really, really helpful. So if we put that graphic up again, I just want to kind of restate it and make sure that that we've got clarity. So pretty much with the retrogression situation, all of those steps 1 to 3 continue as is. The difference is that the people who've got a priority date, rest of the world or Philippines who've got a priority date before the 1st of June 2022 will be able to get a consulate interview. And those that have got a priority date, which is that step number 2, after the 1st of June 2022 will have to wait for their consular interview. Correct?
That's right.
Did I say that right? Okay, good. Okay. So John, Mike's nodding his head. Thank you. I think that hopefully that will be helpful. And for everybody, we have some scenarios that we're going to put into the chat and that just explain what we've covered right now, because hopefully that gives clarity of exactly where everybody is in the situation and how they might be affected. And 2 great analogies that I just wanted to share with everybody. One is, think of the NVC as like the secretary who is scheduling the interview for the consulate. And in this case, and in step 3, they can still get all your documents ready for the interview. They just can't move you into the interview until a visa is available. All right, so that was really, really helpful. Thank you, both of you, for giving that background. Okay, so Joan is asking, Mike, what are your predictions for the June 2023 visa bulletin?
I don't think I'm going out on a limb by projecting that we're not going to see any forward movement until October. So I don't expect to see anything different in June. If we're going to see something different in June, we may actually see it go backwards. Again, based upon the discussion we had earlier of them using up all of the visas that they have available. But they generally don't like to do that. But I certainly do not expect any forward movement until October. Now, that could change, of course, but that's certainly my prediction.
Thank you for sharing, Mike. What are your thoughts, John, on predictions?
I would agree. I mean, I don't think there's going to be forward movement until October at the earliest. June coming so close on the heels of the one we've just had, if I had to make a prediction, I'd say it'd probably stay the same. But Mike's correct that the Department of State is going to keep an eye on how visas, are being used in the early part of this month, and to see how that maybe impacts the overall number for the year, to see if they need to push it back further. If they find that, oh wow, there are still a lot of nurses out there coming forward for their interviews with dates earlier than June 1st, 2022, they might need to push it back a little bit earlier.
Okay. So as everybody knows, nobody really knows for sure. The hospitals don't know, the lawyers don't know, Kinetics doesn't know, Lafora admin don't know. This is really going to be up to the State Department, and we will keep you posted month by month as we progress in this journey together. Jacqueline is saying, is it true there's no issuance of visa until 2025? So Mike, we've now gone through the 5 steps of the green card process. Can you see, so, we can see that Jacqueline, and this is, a lot of nurses have this kind of view, or not really kind of understanding how the visas work. Can you speak to that question and just give a little bit of clarity on that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the short answer is that's absolutely not true at all. There are visas still being issued today. There are plenty of people who have an I-140 approved prior to June 1st, 2022, that are still going through the process. And on the chart Tanya put up, they're still moving from step 4 and interview to step 5 coming to the U.S. And as the dates move forward again in October, we're going to see more people moving forward. So if in October the dates move to, I don't know, let's just make this up, to August or September or whatever, then you're going to have more people continue to go through. I think as a general rule, we've been looking at it and saying from a big picture perspective, if you're an RN or you're a hospital and prior to retrogression, you were looking at from the date of filing your I-140 to the date of arrival in the U.S. would be somewhere in the 8 to 10 month mark. That now it's maybe more accurate to say that from the date of filing the I-140 to the date of actually coming to the U.S. is more in the 16 to 20 month mark. I think that's probably, based on what we know now, a fairly good timing. So if you're starting your case today, May 2023, and you add 16 to 20 months to that, you're probably looking at sometime end of 2024, early 2025. But someone who was filed 6 months ago is not going to be looking at that because they're already in the process. Keep in mind that the way the line moves is from the time you get your I-140 filed and your priority date established, you're moving forward in the line. So the entire time the I-140 is pending, the entire time that you're at the National Visa Center, all that stuff, you're in the line. So one of the things that's really important to do is to make sure that you are doing what's necessary in order to get your I-140 filed as quickly as possible. Another point that I think is fair to make at this time is when all the dates were current, the idea of finding an old approval notice or finding an old NVC notice from some company some agency that sponsored you 4 years ago didn't seem to be that relevant. Maybe your agency asked you for that, but you weren't sure you could find it, so it really wasn't that important when every date was current. The fact that dates are not current now means that you finding that old and disclosing that information to your agency, to the lawyers, is extremely critical, because in most circumstances, you're going to be able to get what's called recapture that old date from that agency that sponsored you in 2013 and then flaked out on you, and now you found that document. We're going to be able to put you in line with your new I-140 filing with the old 2013 date. So I know there was a question that came up earlier that I saw in the comments or chat section of someone who had an old priority date. That is extremely critical. Let your attorney, let your case manager know that you have an old priority date so that we can recapture that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So hopefully, Jacqueline, that gives you some good reassurance to know exactly who is going to be affected, how, and what are the timings associated. And I would encourage everybody to think of it of what is out of our control and what is in our control. What is out of our control is the visa bulletin, the State Department, and the timing of the retrogression. What is in our control is that employers can still do the pre-filing, they can still file cases, they can still pay premium processing. You still need to go through the process. So make sure, everybody, that you're applying, you're getting a great offer, that you are passing your English exam, you're passing your NCLEX exam, you're getting your visa screen, you're collecting your documents. all of those things that John went through in those 5 steps that you still need to do, that's in your control. So there's even more urgency to get that done, because I've heard some nurses say, well, maybe I should go to another country while I'm waiting for retrogression. Really, probably, as Mike said, the opposite is true. This is the time to do all of those things if you want to make your American dream a reality. My Dreams is asking John, hello, is there any possibility that the rest of the world priority will be current before October? John, any opinion on that?
I think it's most likely that it will not be current by October, just like with the Philippines. You know, in the past, I know there has been, in the not too distant past, there's been times when the rest of world category has been current or not as retrogressed as the Philippines category. So, I mean, I think that could be a possibility in the next fiscal year. But again, it's very hard to predict that. But I do think that we're unlikely to see movement even in the rest of the world before October.
Okay, thank you for that, John. All right, so we've got a question here from Martin. Martin is asking, my priority was on the 27th of December 2005. Lucky you, Martin, by the way, because I know there are many people who are wishing that they had that priority date. Can I proceed further procedures right now? I'm Indian, but I don't have a job yet. Can someone help me? So Martin, the answer, as Mike said, if you have a priority date, an early priority date, that's your place in the line. It means that you're going to go ahead of the line, and really important to get a position, get a great employer. There are so many employers right now. We are seeing explosive demand for nurses right now in the United States. In fact, all healthcare workers. So this is a great time to get in the line, and you should move through that line pretty quickly. We have a question here from Princess Mike. Princess is saying, my husband got stuck in medical. I attended the interview. Will he be affected by retrogression?
And the answer is yes. So you have to be current on the day you're interviewed, but you also have to be current on the day that the visa is actually issued. So if someone is stuck in medical, or someone is stuck with needing additional police clearances, or has a 221G issued, and your date is retrogressed, you're not locked into the date of your original interview, you must be current in order to get the visa stamp. So you want to respond to those 221Gs as quickly as possible, provide whatever documentation is needed, work with your case manager or lawyer on that, complete the medical, whatever issue was there that needs to be resolved, but you're not going to get, until the priority date becomes current again, you're not going to get the visa stamp issue.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So there you go, Princess. There's a question from Abi who's asking, case is expedite and at the embassy, how long can you expect an interview, John?
So I think it'll depend on this individual's priority date. But if this individual does have a priority date earlier, one thing I have seen, shortly after the May bulletin was announced and a lot of people were retrogressed, was we did start to see a lot of our earlier cases with the pre-June 1, 2022 priority dates be automatically expedited. And so, my expectation would be that those cases would be scheduled for interviews. I mean, it might depend on the country, because I know some countries are having the applicants, as in Manila, schedule the interview directly themselves, and other countries, the U.S. consulates will schedule the interview themselves. But if the priority date is current and expedite has been granted, I would expect an interview to occur, most likely within the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you for that, John. We have a question here from Sarah. Sarah is asking, Mike, for those who are at the DQ stage but not current, do you recommend going to another country like the UK while waiting for current?
I think it probably depends on a couple factors. First of all, how long of a contract are you going to sign to go work in the UK? And what is your priority date? Are you expecting a wait of only 6 more months? You're expecting to be current in October, November, so probably get an interview sometime this fall. That may not be work well if you're going to have to sign a 1-year contract. But if it's a short-term contract and you can freely travel back and you're just going to go work in the UK, then the government, the USCIS doesn't care where you go work. While you're waiting, you're still going to come back to Manila to do your interview. So it would not be relevant for that.
And Sarah, I would probably add to that, please confer with your case specialist, because it also depends on the employer. So sometimes employers have certain expectations, for example, that you stay in the same unit that you are hired into. So there might be other circumstances there besides just the immigration piece. So I would definitely recommend you to speak to your case specialist, and they will be able to advise you. Iman has a question. So, and I know we've covered this, but I just want to mention those who approved I-140 will affect the retrogression. So we actually have a few scenarios. Iman, I know John went through that in detail. And if you're only joining us now, please watch the explanation that John gave of the 5 steps of the green card process. But if you have an I-140 filed, we are going to be posting into the chat the scenario. We'll show that on the screen right now of the I-140. If you have an I-140 approved and what that means. So all of these different scenarios we're going to be posting into the chat so that you can be able to have some clarity on the different steps, if you're at different steps, and how that might be affected. Okay, and thank you everybody. I see Rose is tagging a friend, Ray is tagging a friend, Ray saying, asking about current. So Ray, we have already answered that question. Yuri is tagging a friend, Michelle's tagging a friend. Thank you for doing that. Noveliza is tagging friends, Julius is tagging. So lots of people tagging their friends. Thank you so much for doing that. I think it's really your way of paying it forward. This is our way of paying it forward for nurses, both from our side and the legal expert side, as well as the Lafora Talk Show. So thank you for tagging your friends. Really important to educate yourself about this process and how it might be affecting different people. MC has a question about police clearances, John. MC says, I have a question regarding my police clearance. I submitted 2 police clearances from 2 countries and I'm no longer living there and will not come back in the next years. Do I need to submit a new one just in case it gets expired due to retrogression?
So, typically, I believe there's guidance on the NVC that, if you have not lived in the country for a certain period of time, that police clearance will remain valid, while you're just waiting for your interview to be scheduled, as long as it was valid at the time you submitted it to NVC.
Okay. Thank you for that. And there's also another question here about police clearances from Alice, John. So maybe we should just tackle that one at the same time. How long does a police certificate serve? Any specific period from issuance date?
So normally it's valid for 1 year, but certain countries have shorter validity periods. I know that a number of the Middle Eastern countries, I think like in Saudi Arabia or UAE, I've seen sometimes where they're only valid for maybe 3 months or so. So, we really need to get it submitted to NVC soon after it's issued.
Okay, so there you go. Alice, hope that gives you the answer you were looking for. Mariah is saying, do you have NCLEX free review? Mariah, yes, we do. So you're welcome to apply, as well as to the Kinetic sister company, O'Grady Payton. And I'm glad that you're asking that question, because that means that you're getting it, that, we're still carrying on. We can still file cases, as the legal expert said. So those of you who have not yet passed your NCLEX exam, get that done, get filed, get in the line. So I love that you're asking that question, Mariah. Okay, Nana is asking, Mike, please, during retrogression, the embassy still use case complete in scheduling interviews, or they use the priority date instead of...
Yeah, the priority date is what will control when you can have an interview scheduled. So the fact that your case is complete or you're DQ'd, that is not going to permit you to have an interview. Your priority date must be current to have an interview.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. So Shiju is saying, I passed the NCLEX, I've got a valid IELTS and visa screen. I'm Indian origin, Irish nurse. Is there any way we can start filing for I-140, or are there any other options, John?
Well, so the way the visa bulletin works, and looking at the different countries of origin, it's going to be based on the country of birth. So, if you were born in India, that's what's going to control, even if you are an Irish citizen now. So, unfortunately for India, there is quite a long retrogression. So, back to 2011, 2012 timeframe. So, it's unfortunately a very long wait for Indian nurses. I know we do see some Indian nurses file that have earlier priority dates, but that, I guess, would be down to the specific employer to, if they're going to be willing to sponsor. I would say that the main times I've seen that with an Indian nurse sponsored with no previous priority date has been for someone who is a born in India but Canadian citizen, so that since Canadian citizens can work as a nurse on a TN, and but again, that would be down to the employer about whether they would be willing to sponsor you, given the long wait for India's date to become current.
Thank you, John. The other thing that we've sometimes also seen is cross-chargeability. If Shaju is maybe married to somebody who was born in another country other than India, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. If you had an Irish spouse or born in Ireland, then we could use his or her country of origin for priority date purposes.
Thank you, John. Okay, Eugene is saying, is it still worth to do premium processing, Mike?
Tough question. A $2,500 question per case actually is the thing. I think for right now, most employers are continuing to do premium processing because the overall length of time is under a year. I think after the October and maybe November bulletins, that things have settled out and we have a better grasp as to what the future looks like, I think premium processing could start to go away fourth quarter this year, first quarter next year, because ultimately, if the processing time of an I-140 under regular is less than the processing time, or than the time you're going to spend in line in retrogression, then there's no true advantage to filing under premium. But I think for right now, most employers are continuing to do premium, but I would expect that to change in the next 6 to 9 months.
Thank you, Mike. And Eugene, that's a good question. And I can also just share with you from our side that all the employers that Kinetics USA work with are still doing premium processing. I know that for many other companies, both direct hire and staffing, are still doing premium processing as well at this time. Okay, we have a question here from Nelson. Nelson is asking, John, I'm at the NVC level waiting for a visa interview date, and my English exam I'm using will be expiring in June. Will this affect me in any way?
So I think it would depend on where the nurse is at regarding the visa screen process, because if the English exam is still valid and has been submitted to CGFNS for the visa screen, then then it should it should be fine. I'm not familiar with all of CGFNS's rules as far as, if they have to receive all the other documentation while that English exam is still valid or not. But that would be definitely something to verify with CGFNS, just where the CGFNS is at with the visa screen process of having that issued, and if the individual will need to retake the English exam if it's not complete, by next month.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. And I can also just add to that question for Nelson or anyone else who finds themselves in that situation. Really important, as John said, to get your visa screen as soon as possible, because that will hold the English exam. And that's where, again, if you find yourself at that NVC stage, you need to keep doing everything that needs to be done. Pass your English, get your visa screen, all of those steps that John went through in the 5 steps of the green card process, and speak to your case specialist if you need any help with that process. Mike, Vivian is asking, I have the I-140 approved and was on the process of filling in the DS-260, but my employer's backed out without any explanation. What happens in this case? And Vivian, I'm so sorry that you are experiencing that.
So as long as the employer that sponsored you for the I-140 does not withdraw the I-140, and as long as the I-140 is been approved more than 6 months ago, and that there was not any type of fraud involved by the employer, then the I-140 priority date is still yours. So even though they're not sponsoring you any longer, that priority date is still yours. So you need to then find a new employer, and a new employer could then sponsor you and retain or recapture that old priority date. So, so there's several factors that we don't know here as to when your I-140 was approved. Did the employer withdraw it? Was there any type of fraud involved in the filing? But assuming all those are answered properly, you will retain your spot in line. So you'll be harmed by the fact that an employer withdrew, but your overall processing time, as long as you find a new employer, will not be impacted.
Okay. So thank you for answering Vivian's question, because Vivian, I'm sure that's very stressful and very upsetting for you. And I just want to reassure you that there are many, many employers all over the United States that would be very excited to speak to you, whether your priority date was before the June cutoff or after the June cutoff. As John had gone through those different steps, we can still help you get to America. All this really means, everybody, is a bit more of a delay. That's essentially the bottom line. But there's still explosive demand for healthcare workers coming to the United States. I actually heard a very good analogy that I wanted to share with everybody that I think kind of puts it in perspective. I was told by somebody last week to kind of think of the visa bulletin and the retrogression kind of like a movie theater, where there are only, say there are like 100 seats in the movie theater, and there are just too many people that want to get into the movie theater. So we have to wait for some people to leave the movie theater, for other people that are waiting in the line to come in. So I just thought that's just kind of a nice analogy or example to think of it. So it doesn't mean to say, Vivian, that you can't come to the United States. It just means that in your case, unfortunately, you had an employer that didn't stick with you, but there are many that will. And you can still come to the United States. It might just take a little bit longer. Okay, we have a question. Let me just see here from Philip. Philip is saying, please, with the interview appointment, does the applicant apply using the US visa appointment link? John?
Yeah, so, again, this will depend on the particular country. There's many embassies and consulates around the world are still scheduling interviews themselves, and the nurse has no control over that, whereas others, including the Philippines, are leaving it up to the applicants. Once the applicant is DOT qualified, has has a current priority date, and there's a online website. The name of it is escaping me right now, but I know that the Filipino nurses and nurses in other countries where this is being done. There is a website run by the U.S. Embassy where the applicants create a profile and are able to schedule their own appointment. They're able to see what dates are available.
Thank you, John. All right, we have a question here from Maria. Maria is saying, thank goodness my priority date is current and I have an interview in May. What do I need to do to prepare for that interview based on the retrogression? Mike?
Well, the retrogression would have no impact on you if your priority date is current. So you would prepare for the interview no different than you would have prepared for it a year ago without retrogression. So your case manager, case specialist will work with you to make sure that you have all your documentation and are fully ready for the interview. But retrogression will have zero effect on your interview.
Thank you, Mike. And congrats, Maria. We are excited for you because I know that must be a huge relief for you. We actually have a graphic for those people who've got interviews in May or going forward, and we'll post that into the chat and put that up on the screen. So if your priority date is before the cutoff, you are not subject to retrogression. We have a question here from Darlin. Darlin is saying, I had my visa interview in April 27th, but I got a 221G. What will happen to me and how will I be affected by the retrogression? John?
Yeah, so unfortunately, if your priority date is not current right now, and it sounds like your visa was not issued by April 30th, then you should obviously comply, submit whatever documentation was requested in the 221G, but unfortunately your visa will not be able to be issued until your priority date becomes current again.
Okay, thank you, John. So again, that will probably be a bit of a longer wait, and we actually have a graphic on 221Gs as well that we can share with you and put into the chat if you have that kind of situation. We have a question here from Shine. This is a difficult one. Mike, what happens to dependents who will be aging out this year? My priority date is June the 1st, 2022.
So if your priority date's actually June 1st, 2022, you're not current. It has to be before that in order to be current. Unfortunately, age out children are not protected due to retrogression. So children can age out. Now, there is a formula that's used to determine your child's age called the Child Status Protection Act, and it's been around for a long time. And basically, the amount of time that your I-140 was pending is added to your child's age to create their age out date. But if your child is turning 21 now, and the earliest you're going to be current is October, then it's likely your I-140 was not pending more than 4 months. But we would need to know the exact specifics of your case. But unfortunately, children are not protected from retrogression. They will age out. Okay. And one thing to keep in mind about that is due to retrogression, some of the decisions that we've historically made relative to follow to join, are my family members going to immigrate at the same time as I am, go to the interview with me, or I'm going to interview in this country where I'm working now, but my family will later interview in another country. All those things may need to be changed as a result of retrogression, because you want to be able to interview with everyone together as quickly as possible. We no longer have that flexibility. So for those of you who have older children, you certainly want to take into consideration all of those factors. Make sure your case specialist is aware of that. Make sure the attorney's aware of it so that you can create a plan for you that gives you the best chance at your child being able to immigrate with you.
Thank you, Mike. So hopefully, Shine, your child will be able to immigrate with you. I know as a mother, that must be very stressful for you. hopefully we can figure that out for you. I'm just looking at the clock and we are almost at time, but I'm going to try and take a few more questions that we haven't had asked before. So we have a question here from Leo. Leo is asking to clarify Filipinos who are also Canadian citizens who currently have an Eb-3 visa application, can they also apply for a TN? And will that affect my green card application? John?
Yes. So if you are a Canadian citizen, you are eligible for TN. You know, with the TN and a pending green card, it can be very fact specific because there does have to be some planning around when you get the TN, when you renew it, where you are in the process as far as having filed the I-140. You know, if you're in the US, what's 100% clear is if you've filed for an adjustment of status to go from being in TN to a permanent resident, you are not able to renew your TN at that point. TNs are supposed to be non-immigrant visas with non-immigrant intent, where you're not looking to immigrate to the US. So there can be scrutiny around that if you were to apply for a TN and you already have an approved I-140. You could still obtain that. I know a lot of people in TN status will go for consular processing to make it clear that they're going to depart the US when the immigrant visa is ready for the interview. But I would say overall that's a very fact specific question that you would want to talk to your employer and the attorney that you work with to figure out if a TN would be the right approach, you know, or if that would you know, be possible given where you are in your current green card process.
Okay, thank you, John. So Leo, please consult with your lawyer and your case specialist so that we can look at your specific situation and see what is best for you in that particular case. We're almost at time. Cariza is asking, hi, I'm already in the US on an H1 visa. I already filed my extension and it was approved. My green card is already on processed, though still in stage 1. How will retrogression affect my status after my 6-year max? Mike?
So if you're on in the US and you're used at doing stage 1, I'm assuming you're referring to perm and you're an H1, which means you're probably not an RN or you're probably a OT or med tech or something. If your perm's extending more than a year, you can renew your H1 beyond the 6 years, or if you have an I-140 approved. So we probably need to know a little bit more about your occupation and what you're saying is stage 1. But generally speaking, there are ways to extend beyond the 6 years if you're in the green card process and started early enough. So I would talk to your employer. And if you're in stage 1, you probably have an attorney working with you who is taking into consideration your 6-year limit as part of it.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So again, Cariza, I think you need to get specific information on your specific case. I see we have a question from Kariba who's asking about diploma nurses. So Kariba, Kinetics are not the employer or the sponsor, but we have many employers that work with Kinetics that do sponsor nurses with diploma. So if you have your diploma, you've got your NCLEX, please apply. We'd be happy to help you. We have a question here, and these are going to be the last 2 questions that I give for John and for Mike. So question from Ram, John is, I'm scheduled to get married in late July. Kinetics is now on the process of filing my I-140. Shall I wait for my marriage before I file my I-140? John?
So I don't think you need to wait. You know, typically, especially if the I-140 is ready to be filed in the near term this month, you know, we can add your spouse at the MVC stage. And given that there is retrogression right now, I don't think adding your spouse is going to delay your overall process of being able to arrive in the US. So I would say go ahead and file the I-140 as soon as possible, because that way you'll get the earliest possible priority date.
Okay, yeah, Ram, just as an aside, I would agree 100% because you just want to get your place in the line, and congrats on your upcoming marriage. Mike, last question is for you. Errol is asking, is it advisable to transfer my case from Abu Dhabi US Embassy to Manila US Embassy? Abu Dhabi US Embassy is giving less EB3 visas compared to the Manila Embassy. Is that correct statement? And what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, that's not a correct statement. The embassies themselves do not have specific allotments that they pass out. So it's all based upon priority date. We generally do not recommend transferring embassies because it can significantly delay cases. However, if there's a situation that you're no longer working in Abu Dhabi and you're no longer living there, then of course you're going to have to transfer your case back to Manila. And I think we're probably going to see that more often with retrogression, that people's contracts are ending and they're going to be coming back. So I think the key is when you file your I-140, that's when that's designated. You need to be looking forward into the future. Where am I going to be a year and a half from now? What's the situation? You talk to your case specialist, talk to your attorney about that to make sure you, as much as possible, choose the correct embassy. But there's simply not an embassy that has more EB3 green cards to give out than any other embassy.
Okay, so thank you, Mike, for answering that question. And this is, again, what I love about the Lafora Talk Show. And thank you again to the Lafora admin for giving us this platform to share accurate information. There's a lot of misinformation that floats around, and it's really important to get the experts' opinion and make sure that you are educating yourself and empowering yourself with the right information so that you can make the right decisions for you and for your family. So everybody, we are at time. I'm going to just take one question for myself from the chat, and that was Garima, who asked, do you have a free PTE course and review? And the answer is yes. So let's end off on a positive note. We have the Kinetics Care Package where we pay for the course for nurses. This is part of our way of paying it forward for nurses. And Garima, the answer to that one is yes. We're going to end off now with a short clip of a video from the show that we did on April 17th about the retrogression. It's a short clip from Paul, who is one of the Lafora admin, just giving his viewpoint about the retrogression, and I think some words of hope and inspiration for everybody. So we're going to show that video to end off now.
As someone who survived retrogression, I had to wait almost 10 years to get to the United States. Abandoned by employer back in 2014 when I was already current. By the way, my priority is 2008. Abandoned by my employer in 2014. Got recaptured 2015. When I got recaptured, there was a retrogression again for several years back. Put me back another 2 years, almost 10 years to get here and live the American dream, the life that I wanted. Guys, do not stop with what you're doing. I have three key takeaways for you guys, for you nurses all over the world that are watching us today. The first one is continue with what you are doing, with the process that you are doing, whether it is filing I-140, whether it is getting documentary qualified, whether taking your IELTS, reviewing for the NCLEX, or doing your visa screen, or whatever processes your employers or your lawyers are requiring from you. Keep doing that. You want all of them in place for when the retrogression moves and it's time for you to be interviewed. You want all of them in place because the visa is numerically limited. Retrogression is a cycle. It happens. It will happen. It will keep happening. The first one that gets into the consul's desk with all their papers in gets to go to the United States first. Number two, do not make life-changing decisions until you have your visa. Don't sell your houses. A lot of people made this mistake. I've been an admin for Lafora for 4 years. I've been a nurse here in the States for 6. I survived retrogression for 10 years. Heard people sold their houses, quit their jobs, or quit their kids' school and then ending up having to have retrogression, and now they don't have visa because they're retrogressed for a year. Don't do that. Wait for your visa on your hand, and you have a flight to the United States before you make any life-changing decisions. And the last one is do something else while waiting. Go to Saudi, go to UK, go to Germany, stay in your country, and improve your nursing skills, get more competent, try another unit and try specialty units, but do something to improve your career. Once you get here, trust me, it will be worth it. If I quit, I would not have lived the American dream that I've always wanted when I was young. So that's it, guys. This is only 1 year retrogression, but we're going to survive through this. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for that message from Paul. We just love that message. I wanted to show it again. I think we leave hopefully with a message of hope and optimism. We know that this is a scary time. We know that we hear the word retrogression and everybody starts freaking out. Let's just keep doing what we need to do in order to continue, educate yourself about the process. And our goal, everyone, is to get you to the United States to live your American dream. Just a quick shout out to some of the upcoming shows we have. So continue to educate yourself. We have on Onwards and Upwards, the Kinetic Show every Friday. We have Nurses Month game show. So come and win prizes. We've got lots and lots of prizes for everybody, a prize almost every day of the month. We've got our usual immigration Q&A. So our team will be back. On the 26th, we're talking about the difference between direct hire versus staffing model and how that might impact you. On the 2nd of June, we'll be talking about benefits. So what is a 401k, Roth IRA, 403b? On the 9th of June, we've got stateside Alabama, 16th Q&A, immigration Q&A. On the 23rd, a client showcase. And on the 30th, we're going to be talking about transportation, car loans, brands, etc. The next Lafora talk show will be on the 13th of June. We'll be talking about work-life balance. So check the time zone converter. And Kinetics College every Monday. This is free information for you to pass your NCLEX or pass your English exam with our aspired partners, Aspire, iPass, Swoosh, and Niners, who so graciously give their time freely for you to be able to educate you for those things that you need to do in order to come to the United States. So I want to thank John and Mike for joining us. I want to thank everybody. I know there are hundreds of people that have been watching today all over the world for joining us today. Finishing off with a message of hope, and we hope to see you in America soon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Tanya.
We'll be back next time.
Bye.
Bye.